Hello guys, how's it going? We're going to be critiquing a video by Tristyn Lee, who's apparently a carnivore that's now not apparently a carnivore, with a doctor, that's definitely right, a doctor, Mike Israetel, and some other guy that's got a turd on his head. So I'm here with Nicole from Form Fat Girl Nutrition. I'll link her below. We're going to be doing a joint collaboration effort to dismantle their dismantling. So we should continue.
You just said turd on his head.
We're supposed to talk smack about.
Did you see it?
I did, and I couldn't stop staring after you said that.
It is a turd in his head, honestly.
The carnivore diet first, yes. It's not a terrible diet for muscle.
Obviously, there's been a major shift. I went from essentially consuming carbs a day to now upwards.
What do you think of that? What do you think of those two physiques?
I mean, the one on the right, I know that's aesthetically pleasing these days, but I don't think that can't be healthy to maintain that level of leanness all year round. Tristyn was maintaining this level of leanness all year round. I don't know how he did that and still had energy. But I like the physique on the left just because I know that's more sustainable long term. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've got into these kind of shapes in the past quite a few times. I maintained the sort of leanness that you can see on the right there, around about 6% body fat estimate. You're right, yeah. I mean, you can do it. This guy's a young guy. He can maintain that kind of physique because he's busy and he's off his head on product caffeine and protein powders and pre-workouts and all sorts of things. But at the same time, is he going to maintain it? No, I don't think that's maintainable for a long period of time. I think a lot can happen as well. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what he says in the video.
Well, your organs are working extra hard too to maintain that. So from an optimal health standpoint and metabolic functioning standpoint, I don't believe, because we all have a healthy level of body fat and a healthy level of leanness, and then it gets to the point where it becomes unhealthy just because of how hard your body's working just to maintain your health when you get too lean or too fat.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's definitely forcing it. Let's see what he's got to say about
500 grams of carbs per day. Calories equated, I ended up dropping weight.
How the hell did that make? What I sense. You've been lean for like ever?
Being this young person coming up in the industry and always having to be sharp and lean for social media, what is your mind like around your body? You know, you're kind of like, I'm really honestly cool with whatever happens.
After age 18 or so, those small differences between carbs and no carbs can for you mean 50% muscle gain difference. And we're here to tell you that
Did you hear that? Did you say 50% more gains with carbs?
He said 50%. You might have to rewind that. I think he said 50% difference in muscle gain. I don't know that he said more or less. I think he said difference.
Let's go back a bit.
healthy, and you can eat all plants and be insanely healthy if you just stick to
This is real pain.
and you can eat.
Yeah, what is your mind like around your body? You know, you're kind of like, I'm really honestly cool with whatever happens.
After age 18 or so, those small differences between carbs and no carbs can for you mean 50% muscle gain difference. And we're here to tell you that
Yeah, it can make a
Muscle gain
difference.
difference. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, what do you think that 50% gains is? Like, what do carbs give you that protein and fat don't?
I think he's coming, I'm hoping this isn't the case, but he might be coming from the standpoint that you need carbs to put on muscle because that's mainstream. That's why a lot of these bodybuilders jack up on rice. Chicken, broccoli, and rice is a bodybuilder diet. So I wonder if he's coming at it from the standpoint that he's going to be able to gain more muscle because he increases carb intake.
I mean, your body's pretty adaptive if you just give it the right tools and nutrients to build muscle tissue. I think up to a certain point, it will allow you to build all the muscle that you can. Carbs will make it easier. Yeah, carbs are hyperpalatable. The point is, this guy's not a large guy, Nicole. I think he's something like 160 pounds.
You're talking Tristyn?
The little guy in the middle, yeah, the Asian gentleman. Yeah, so he's not a heavy guy. He is muscular by all means, but he's not heavily muscled, if that makes sense. He's just very, very lean.
Yeah. He's short too. I think he's only like 5'3" or something like that. Like he's actually not a tall dude either. But yeah, I'm wondering if he's coming at it from that standpoint of carbs, muscle, and leanness, and all that stuff.
Yeah, personally, I'd be looking at his fat-free mass and like his fat-free mass index and looking at and thinking, okay, how close is he to his like natty limit? If he's very close, then yeah, he's probably going to benefit from eating more carbs. I mean, at least to put more fuel in the tank. That's only in the case where he can't eat any more. Like I'm at the point now where I'm trying to build muscle. My body has given me strong hunger satiety signals not to eat much more. So for me, it's like I can increase carbs to give me an extra bit of fuel. Like they're more hyperpalatable, like you mentioned. So for me, like having some dairy might be useful. Again, it's not necessarily the healthiest thing to do.
Yeah, I guess that's a fair point because he's so lean and his body's working so hard to maintain that leanness. Yeah, I guess that's a fair point. Adding in those extra carbs can provide that instant energy, kind of to give your bodily functions a little bit of a rest because it's super easily digestible and quick energy. So yeah, that's a fair point.
Do you think he'd have the same experience if he just increased his fat by like a bit?
I don't know why he's going to carnivore. To I think in the beginning it said he's eating 500 grams of carbs. I don't know why does he get into that in this video? I don't know why he moved from that because I don't see how he can possibly feel better eating that amount of carbohydrates compared to how he felt when he was on a carnivore diet.
We'll see anyway. I think we're prospecting now. I think we'll just see what he says and take it as it comes.
Yeah.
The mainstream of science shows that you can eat all meats and be very healthy, and you can eat all plants and be insanely healthy if you just...
Soundbite. I don't know about that. I don't know if eating spinach and almonds is indicated towards optimal human health.
No, absolutely not. And there's no, I mean, I've seen bodybuilders claim they're 100% plant-based and are jacked as hell. But I've also seen people get called out for lying because they were caught eating a piece of fish or chicken. So I'm hyper skeptical on people who are super jacked claiming they're vegan. I am hyper skeptical on that. I don't know. You're a bodybuilder. Do you think you can get the amount of muscle you have on your frame? Do you think you could have achieved that on a 100% plant-based diet, honestly?
If I'm honest, no. I mean, I think I did try a vegetarian diet myself for, I think, 4 days, and that's all I lasted. I lasted 4 days. So what does that tell you? I mean, the health impact of it was probably the most obvious thing to me. Like the immediate health impact, like how I felt versus having a diet which maybe 70% plants because I was eating like lots of basically fruit and, probably like 30% was like protein, fat from animals. The rest of it was like carbs. So yeah. I was eating, like most bodybuilders are eating a plant-based diet, I think, for the most part. But a lot of them actually notice they have an improvement in digestion when they go more keto or low carb, when they get rid of the extra carbs, like before contest to shred down a bit.
Yeah, and to help with the bloat and help their muscles pop a bit more.
Yeah.
Just stick to minimally processed, awesome foods.
I had progressed for almost 5 years using a low-carb, ketogenic, and carnivore, eventually carnivore approach. After I hit 18 years old, I noticed this plateau where my strength was stagnant. My muscle building was not progressing as much as I'd like it to.
So, by the sounds of things, like 5 years, carnivore / low carb approach. He's made some gains, but now he's plateaued a bit. Wasn't that just normal when you train for like 5 years? I mean, I don't know people that get beyond 5 years training and make like, I don't know, 50% jump in gains. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the newbie gains, right? He started when he was 18. He's now, 23, 24? So that's normal. I mean, we all have our genetic limit, and it starts to slow down. Your progress starts to slow down as you get closer to your genetic limit. But people expect to keep growing because that's what you see on stage and that's what you see all plastered all over social media.
Yeah.
That implementation of carbohydrates after so long of not having it, that was what I needed to progress my training more.
And it definitely helped quite a bit, and you're just like full as hell and lean still. So now we're gonna really push hard.
Okay, so today's video is going to be a little bit of a different style video. You guys have seen all of my recent training videos or not recent training videos where the majority of them are all cut up and edited to make me look massive and primarily focused on the training. I wanted to do a sit down video where I discuss some of the recent somewhat major adjustments that I've made to both my training as well as my nutrition in particular, which all of you seem to be very interested in based on the views on the shorts and things like that. So I know carnivore and diets in general are the hot topic. I've got two very special guests here who are extremely intelligent, extremely knowledgeable, both in the bodybuilding realm and outside of that. We've got the one and only Dr. Mike Israetel, who you guys already know and love, and the one and only Mr. Jared Feathered with the D.
Feathers.
Today we're going to be running through the adjustments that I've made with my training and nutrition, and you guys are going to see some of the differences. I'm going to see if some of my anecdotes line up with some of the literature.
From like just hearing this guy now, I quite like him. The way he speaks is very articulate, and he sounds very clear and with it. But I'm wondering, like 5 years down the line, is he going to be the same? Is he going to be this like complete bloat lord? What do you reckon?
Oh, have you seen any of his videos before?
Yeah,
Tristyn Lee?
yeah, he trains pretty well. Not too bad for the most part.
Yeah, he's very smart, and he does try to educate himself in this realm. But yeah, I agree. I'm wondering what he would look like or be like in 5 years' time, especially if he's constantly wanting to grow. I'm wondering how long he's gonna maintain that end card, if you will.
Yeah.
I'm sure that these two are both extremely knowledgeable on. Obviously, you guys know that I did carnivore for nearly 2 years. This was my prior diet to working with Jared over the past 2 months. As you guys can see, it was fairly limited to much less foods. What would you guys say is the main primary downfall from a hypertrophy standpoint of the carnivore diet?
John, I just noticed this is 0 carb.
Yeah. Right here is post-training carbs. None.
Not applicable.
The carbs also not.
What a carnivore diet is.
Had some fruits in there.
You're right.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So being that Mike was actually a sports nutrition scientist for, was it Olympic weightlifting? Who was it? USA weightlifting?
We are the official nutrition people for USA weightlifting.
Yeah. And then you did something.
And I was sport nutrition consultant for the U.S. Olympic Training Center in Johnson City, Tennessee for weightlifting and for cycling.
Yeah.
So, yeah, performance nutrition was my job.
Yeah. So I'll talk about the implementation and structure of the diet that I did and why I did it. Psychological reasonings, kind of some of the stuff we talked about yesterday. I'll talk about some of the why it was a slower introduction, things like that. And then Mike can probably speak toward the performance aspect of why carbohydrates are really good and all the literature surrounding that. So we could definitely start with that if Mike wants to.
We're supposed to talk smack about the carnivore diet first, yes?
If you'd like to talk smack, yes.
Well,
Yeah, in case you don't know, Mike's big on like plant-based nutrition and stuff like that.
I kind of figured.
He didn't build his body that way. He's not been a plant-based advocate for long. I think it's more to be affiliated with certain brands perhaps and penetrate a newer up-and-coming Generation X sort of market, I reckon.
Wait, so he's a plant-based dieter now, so-called?
I'm thinking so. I mean, I think he still has
Okay.
meat, but I'm not certain. He might go into it.
Okay.
But I know he thinks like vegetarianism's good and stuff.
Okay. I'm familiar with him. I don't know much of his
I
content.
have a level.
Yeah.
There you go.
So, on the plus side, you're eating absolutely enough protein on the carnivore diet, which is really great. And in broad strokes, 3 meals a day, evenly spaced, especially if those meals are very high in protein and very high in fat, which they were, means you're getting a steady stream of amino acids to your muscles all day long.
Especially with the fast, long digestion.
Exactly. So really, you're not under eating protein. The supply of raw materials for construction of muscle tissue is strong. And so that's really good. Another benefit is you are getting lots of saturated fats which at least at some minimum level and above support great hormone balance and testosterone production. So that's a very good thing. And so in those regards, assuming that your calories were sufficient, it's not a terrible diet for muscle. Big problem was that during the time that you ran the diet, I don't believe you gained much weight. Is that correct?
It was difficult to consume enough food too because it was so high in protein.
Yes, protein is.
So from that, Nicole, what do you think? I mean, saying his diet is very high in protein, and he's struggling to gain weight past the 5-year mark, so he's started to implement carbohydrates.
I mean, it depends on what kind of weight he's gaining. I mean, he was lean, but if he's trying to gain muscle, and I don't know if he's trying to gain fat, because you know how people bulk up and then lean down. So if he's trying to bulk up, I don't know that he can bulk up while at the same time putting on muscle, because if you're bulking up, it's going to be some body fat in that. So it depends on what his goals are. If he wanted to bulk up, then yeah, carbs will absolutely help with that. But if he wanted to bulk up and stay lean, I'm not sure. That to me is a conflict, and I don't know if that's 100% possible to do both at the same time in a healthy way.
It is tricky. I think beyond maybe 4 or 5 years of like natural training, I think for most people they'll finally have to almost force themselves to gain body fat to start gaining muscle. I think you have to have like an elevated insulin level. Not to say that insulin is like the primary driver of muscle growth or anything like that, but I think having more storage hormones in your body is perhaps more useful. That's been my experience anyway, just having like more dairy and stuff like that.
Yeah, 100%. And that's why if he's looking to bulk up, then yeah, carbs will absolutely help in that way, but it's going to come in the form of mostly body fat if he's looking to gain weight.
Yeah.
Is satiating.
Yeah, very.
High level of protein plus fat together are very satiating for the calories. And so a lot of people will do variations of the carnivore diet specifically to help them not eat as much food. And while such a diet can keep you lean and keep you at a low body weight without much effort, because, you know, someone's like, all right, eat whatever you want, but it's only meats and fats. You're like, okay, there you go. You're not going to go off the rails and eat too much. That's great for people who have a weight control problem. For people who need to be gaining weight because you've been lean for like ever, and so you don't have a problem with being excessively fat or gaining too quick. Your problem is the opposite problem, that you are in your late teens, which is when you are both joint and connective tissue wise, psychological motivation wise, and hormone and cellular functioning wise, just the most geared up you could ever be to put on slabs of beef.
Right.
And you were not eating enough calories to gain weight during that time. To put in perspective, so how much did you weigh your freshman year of high school?
Oh, I don't know. I didn't weigh myself. Probably, I'm guessing 130.
130. My freshman year of high school, I weighed 100 pounds. I was 5'2". And I gained 20 pounds of tissue every single year of high school. So by the time of my freshman year of college was beginning, I weighed 180. And I did not do this by accident.
Just on that point, Nicole, what do you think is like a healthy like percentage or rate of weight gain? Like, bear in mind they're the young people, like young teens back in the day.
I mean, it depends on what kind of weight you're trying to gain, right? So if you're trying to gain healthy weight in the form of muscle, I mean, that's hard to gain 1 pound of muscle. So I mean, 1 pound of muscle in what, a month, I think is a good clip. But if you're gaining faster than that, it's not all muscle, you're gaining body fat at the same time. So when he says 20 pounds of tissue, he's comparing himself to Tristyn, and you can't do that, one. And two, he's making it seem like he gained 20 pounds. I don't know if this is what he meant, but I inferred that he gained 20 pounds of muscle in that year. And that's hard to do. I'm very skeptical that 20 pounds was all muscle, because it's it takes a long time just to put on at least 1 pound of strict muscle.
Yeah, I agree. I've been on an intensive massing phase, you might call it, for the last 4 months. And I think I've gained maybe probably 4 to 5 pounds of weight, but half of that has been fat.
Exactly.
Without a doubt. And that's been hard work. I've had to really force feed. So 20 pounds in a year for someone that, is a rookie, like a newbie, like a kid. It was quite hard. I'm quite impressed to believe that.
Yeah.
Accident. I put on weight by eating food to an amount that I was at least moderately uncomfortable with. During the summers, when I do more of my gaining than the rest of the time, I did not do things optimally. I would look at food and be like, but then I continued eating. And if I had only eaten no carbohydrates, it would have just been really difficult to put on extra calories, as was for you difficult to do.
Right.
So the main drawback, there are other drawbacks of the carnivore diet in your case, was that its satiating effects and its difficulties of constricting food choices so much prevented you from physically putting on weight. That is the big downside. So there is another world in which you could.
So he's talking, it sounds like they're talking dirty weight. They have to be talking dirty weight. There's no way they're talking strict muscle, because if we're talking calories, if we're talking just calories, fat has more of those so-called calories than carbs, right? So if he's eating all of that fat on this carnivore diet, he was eating organ meats and fatty steaks, and he was eating a lot of fatty meats. So if we're talking strictly calories, he was eating a lot of calories in fat. He was eating a lot of calories. It's just the problem is those foods are building blocks and being used by the body. Whereas if you're eating that amount of calories as carbs, you're gaining largely body fat vice muscle. So it sounds like they're coming at it as a dirty bulk. They're not defining what they mean by put on weight, because you're getting two different results with these two different diets. What's your take on that? That's what I'm getting so far.
I agree. Yeah, Nicole, I agree, because you have to be very specific when you talk about weight. Like Professor Barkay says, "Oh, did you lose weight? Was that fat? Or was that muscle? Are you trying to gain weight? Is that fat or is that muscle?" You have to be very specific here. I think just gaining fat for the sake of it isn't helpful. Tristyn in this video we've seen, he's very lean regardless of which picture at the start we looked at. So he can afford to gain body fat and not be a negative health risk.
Right.
But I think the problem is people start to force it, and that's when you start to get an issue. So most of these bodybuilders, I'm quite in tune with what they do because I know lots of different pros and stuff. They do use lots of medications to try and get around some of the health defects, so like the metformin, blood pressure medications. So I think they're putting this guy down quite an unsteady road here, because he is making progress already. He just, by the sounds of things, just needs to eat more fat. He just needs to have less output, I think.
Yeah, they're just giving him bad advice, and that's just, they're leading him down this dirty bulk bad advice. He was doing good the way he was going, but I just had to throw that in just because they're not really defining the goal of this conversation on what they're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I'm sure the same, Nicole, as me. Like when we have a client consultation or intake form, the start is always like obviously their name, then it's goals. You're coming to me to achieve something. You have to make sure your goals are specific. If someone says to me, "I want to gain 20 pounds," all right, well, go on a diet with, I don't know, milk, fruit, honey, and a bit of meat, and have loads of weight gainer shakes and stuff. There you go, there's your 20 pounds. But no one's coming to me for that sort of request. So, it's specifics, isn't it?
Yeah.
Could have rerun the universe and run it back again with your current knowledge. Hypothetically, you could have used a carnivore diet in a hypercaloric condition and actually gained weight. And then you would have seen a decent amount of muscle mass gain with some fat mass, and then we could do some mini cuts to take off the fat. But it would not have been optimal, but it would have been a lot better. So the carnivore stuff was not ideal.
Why?
But it was
Why?
okay. What was not okay is that the carnivore diet ended up, through a combination of the carnivore diet plus you just being lean as dope, ended up preventing you from putting on size. And that is because it prevented the imposition of a hypercaloric condition and thus weight.
Essentially, throughout the first 2 weeks of us working together, calories equated, I ended up dropping weight after adding in the carbohydrates, obviously with...
I find that very bizarre. What do you think, Nicole? So they've equated the calories, the total caloric intake. He's added in carbs, took away some fats by the sounds of it, and he's lost weight.
Yeah, you're just shifting your metabolism. You're shifting your metabolic energy at that point. So, I mean, yeah, initially when you change any metabolic function and energy source, I don't doubt he drops weight. If my weight stalled, I do increase my carbs a little bit to get it back on track, and then I drop them again. So it's shifting. It's just shifting the energy, but it's temporary. It's not gonna sustain the weight loss. That's just temporary weight loss at first in the beginning, and then it's gonna all even out.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I think, like, biochemically speaking, by having an adjustment in the carbohydrate intake, you'll have a slightly higher leptin level. I'm guessing. It's kind of like what bodybuilders do when they try to do like a long diet. You'll have a phase for like a few weeks where you might just have like a break, say like a maintenance diet, something like that. That's different to the experience I had recently. So I did a meat, fruit, honey experiment for 3 days, and I gained a significant amount of body fat in that time. My overall body weight went up quite drastically. I think it's like 4 pounds. So I didn't have that experience. So it just goes to show. I mean, this is bizarre. This is bizarre that that his weight actually dropped.
Well, he works out a ton too. Like, he's in the gym every single day, so he's burning a lot of that off. I mean, that's first to go. So that, to me, is why this isn't shocking. But I can't see that, so I don't know. I can't see what's written on the screen, so I don't know how they actually shift his diet. I don't know what the ratio of carb to how many carbs he's eating right now, because I can't see what's on the screen.
I can't see either if it makes you feel any better. It doesn't zoom in.
Yeah.
But, yeah. All right, we'll carry on and see what they say.
Adding in carbs, you'd be expecting to, or a lot of people would be expecting to gain weight through water, glycogen source, things like that, filling out. But it was actually the opposite for me. Do you have any idea why that may have been?
My best hypothesis is that because you were eating essentially no carbohydrate, you were
ass off,
training like a monster, you were in a very overreach state. Your total body systemic stress was very high. You were thus in a permanent halfway fight or flight response. That degree of stress in many people, not all, but most, causes a retention of water, particularly under the skin.
Right.
And that can be a lot of water weight, 5 to 10 pounds, no problem. I'm actually balls deep in a diet myself, and I'm carrying a ton of water weight right now. If I took the next 3 or 4 days to eat at maintenance, taking my carbs from 250 a day to 600 a day, I would lose weight at the end of that process. I'd lose 5 pounds. You'd be like, why the hell does that make? In a sense, I would look way tighter and my muscles will. I suspect that's what happened to you. It's my best guess.
That's interesting. So he's kind of going along the argument of over-exercising, under-eating, chronic stress, high cortisol. I'm guessing he's saying he's added in the carbs, therefore his stress hormones have gone down. Because imagine you're in a depleted state the entire, for 4 or 5 years straight, whatever. All of a sudden someone gives you, a packet of Haribo. It'll perk you up, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Your stress hormones would acutely go down.
Yeah, but he mentioned he works out like a beast. He still does, but that's kind of what I was saying too with the carbs, because he does work out like a beast. But that is true. A lot of people do retain water. I'm one of them when they're hyper stressed. But just because he's adding in carbs, you're still in a stress state if you work out intensely. And he works out intensely. He lifts heavy. He works out, I think, almost every single day for over an hour. So your cortisol is jacked anyway. Your adrenaline's pumping, and your hormones are out of whack. Working out intensely anyway, you're putting your body in a constant stress state, regardless of what your diet looks like. So I kind of agree and disagree with his argument, because his stress levels, in my opinion, haven't changed, because his workout his workouts don't seem to have changed. So I don't know. What do you think about working out intensely? Do you think diet plays a role in your stress levels that much to affect the same amount of intensity on a more carb diet than a carnivore diet? Because I assume you've done both, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I think that what we're dealing with here is a chronic systemic stress. He's been doing a lot of stuff, probably eating not enough food for a long period of time.
Yeah.
He may get some acute response, like I kind of mentioned earlier, like dopamine might go up or something. He might have more serotonin temporarily when he's adding more carbs. But these things always backfire. I think what you've got to deploy here, if I was his coach, would be say, look, you need to cut back on your steps each day, your training volume, whatever it is. I advocate high intensity training, so I wouldn't actually train less intensity. I might just train less often. So it'd be a case of recovering better, applying the same training, maybe a day off here and there, less steps, like I said, just increase fat intake slightly. I think that would have yielded him a much better result, both in terms of gains in the gym and long-term health.
Yeah.
Is finally your body got enough carbohydrates. Carbohydrates activate the parasympathetic nervous system preferentially more than other nutrients. So carbs tend to reduce cortisol more than the other nutrients, which is a direct stress hormone. And when they do that, your body's like, oh, okay, oh my God, we're not fight or flight anymore. Once you're not fight or flight, a lot of that body water will start to drop off. And something you probably noticed was your muscles felt fuller and tighter, but you actually looked leaner because under the skin water had gone away.
Right.
That's
There's a lot to unpack in that very short segment. I think his viewpoint is quite myopic. He's saying, well, increase carbs, you'll get some kind of reduction of cortisol. But okay, what else will happen? What happens when you have to increase carbs more and more to get that same effect in your muscles?
You have to keep increasing. Amino acids play a large role in your cortisol levels and your stress hormones, and you don't get that immediate blood sugar spike, which is also stress to the body. So you can get the same effect without that blood sugar spike just through eating your protein.
I think they're doing what I call chasing the dragon. So they're thinking, okay, what is the problem right now? Yeah, he might get some temporarily acute phase benefit from incorporated carbohydrates. 2 weeks down the line, 3 weeks down the line, eventually he'll get to a point where he can't increase carbohydrates anymore. His sensitivity to carbohydrates will eventually drop, so he'll become what they call insulin resistant. Then he'll have to exercise more to almost keep that in, that state where he's still receptive to the insulin response. So I don't think it's advised. It's just dealing with the short term, right?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. You're chasing that blood sugar roller coaster at that point, but you can achieve the same effect just by keeping your protein where he had it. Yeah,
I think leucine's the primary driver of muscle protein synthesis. They've done comparative studies, and they said, look, you're going to get 95% of results, or whatever it is, with the leucine in a good high protein diet. And you might get 5% extra with the carbohydrates, but the problem with that 5% is, to get 5%, you end up damaging your health along the way, which means you might sleep not as well. You might have an impaired digestion, which means that 5% will then just fall off. So
exactly.
My best guess as to why you temporarily lost a whole bunch of body water. I don't think that's necessarily inherent to the carnivore diet that you're running. I think that probably has more to do with the fact that while you were doing really high volume, high frequency training, you also didn't have the carbs and calories to support that sort of training.
Right.
And how many times did you deload or take an active rest phase during?
Never in years.
Yeah, it's hard. And so
yeah, he's overtraining. I mean, I don't advise deloads at all personally, but you don't need to deload if you auto-regulate your training within a given week. He can take Nicole, he can take a week off training. Okay, fine. He'll feel a bit better, whatever. We'll then go back to square one. He doesn't resolve the root cause problem.
Right. I don't know why they're talking to him about his diet. The problem is like you said, he's overtraining, and that's doing damage to his body long term. So I don't understand why they're not talking to him about the frequency of his training rather than adding all these carbs to his diet. It's counterproductive.
That's the thing with the fitness influencers nowadays. He's probably got quite a big following.
He does.
He has to post a lot of stuff, a lot of Instagram pictures, lots of sharing stuff. You know, he's got to be in the camera. Every time he's in front of the camera, he gets more money, basically. So he's chasing that. But I think like I said, short-term fix, I don't think it's long-term beneficial.
You ended up being in this kind of like halfway beat to shit state all the time. Tons of inflammation, tons of stress. When the carbs hit, they started healing you up, and that healing resulted in a huge stress reduction. And my best guess is that that's what caused the body water.
Right. And one of the primary benefits that I noticed was my cognitive function was extreme. Like I felt very sharp when I was on the carnivore diet, and I also didn't get sore. So those are two changes that I noticed quite the difference in between the carnivore diet and not eating carbohydrates. Now, a lot of
What do you think about this muscle soreness thing, Nicole?
I missed that about the when he was carnivore muscle soreness.
Yeah, so he is less sore as a carnivore. So by sounds of things, he is recovering quite well from his workouts. He wasn't overly sore. He had cognitive benefits. He felt sharp.
Well, he's less inflamed, right? So you're adding all these carbs to your diet. It doesn't matter what the carb source is, right? It doesn't matter. It's inflammatory. It's going to cause a lot of bloating. It causes a host of issues. So he's probably more inflamed than he was eating the carnivore diet, because fats are natural anti-inflammatory. Now he introduced pro-inflammatory foods into his diet, and then he's working out, which also causes inflammation. So yeah, he's in a constant state of inflammation at this point.
People think more soreness means you've made more gains or it's more muscle growth, but I've not noticed. It's an indicator that you've worked a muscle group. It doesn't mean you're going to get a benefit from it. It doesn't mean you'll adapt, I don't think.
Yeah, kind of like you're not sweating. That means it's not a good workout. I'm like, walking is the best thing you can do. I don't sweat. So yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions there. But yeah, he's in a chronic state of inflammation at this point, it sounds like.
Yeah.
carnivore advocates tout the benefits of, I'm never sore, and also being sharp all the time. As soon as I introduced carbs, the initial change was that I was a little bit brain foggy. And then after about a week period, I was completely fine, pretty much back to normal and pretty sharp. And then I also noticed that through my workouts, even with potentially lower volume, obviously there was some technique modifications and stuff as well, I was actually getting sore. And I had a conversation with Jared and I said, is it actually beneficial to not have that soreness like the carnivores or many carnivore advocates preach? And he was talking to me about the benefits of actually getting sore as a signal or as a symptom, I guess, of the training that you're doing. So could you speak a little bit to what that is indicative of, that level of soreness or that adjustment in soreness after adding in carbohydrates?
Yeah, it at least shows you that.
Before we get into this, Nicole, do you think he's going to provide? Do you think he's going to provide any mechanism?
Absolutely not. I can't wait to hear what he says. This is already off to a ridiculous start with it's okay to feel sore. That means you're working hard enough and you're reaping all the benefits of your working out. So keep going and push through the soreness. Keep pushing.
There's some sort of correlation of eating carbohydrates and what that does as far as actually creating that muscular damage and kickstarting the processes necessary to build the lean tissue. So it's like when I go hypercaloric, I immediately also get a lot more sore. When I'm deep into contest prep, I also notice that I'm not getting a lot of soreness. That's not inherently a good thing. Getting excessively sore or even just detecting soreness in the muscle tissue isn't also a surefire way to say, hey, I'm definitely building lean muscle. But it's definitely something that we can, with the data on it, say, it's probably a good idea if you're a little sore and your frequency of training is correct and everything like that. So when you increased the carbohydrates, you have more of those materials to kind of kickstart that process. Right. So and this happened to me recently, actually, when I went from training super hard, no carbohydrates at the very end of my contest prep to increasing my carbs, my hamstrings were sore for like 4 days.
Right.
That's kind of another reason why I shot those in really slowly. The parasympathetic response that Mike was talking about, psychologically, you not being excessively brain foggy and then not making you overly sore, like going from 0 carbs to 500 grams of carbs a day with the training that you were doing, you would have just been sore for like 2 weeks. And an over amount of soreness can be a bad thing. So we didn't want to do that to you. But
Did you hear anything he said that was useful there?
What? It sounded like he had no idea what the hell he was talking about at all. Like throughout that whole thing, he was like not answering the question, just dancing around the topic without providing any sort of concrete information. I don't think he has any clue what he was talking about through that whole conversation there.
I mean, all he did was mimic the parasympathetic response kind of argument that Dr. Mike Israetel mentioned. That was about it. And that, even then, it's acute. He's kind of saying, you know, too much soreness isn't good, no soreness isn't good either. I'm like, well, the idea isn't to just get sore. It doesn't really show you anything. The reason why people tend to get sore is two pretty obvious reasons to me. One is they've got excess inflammation, so they can't actually recover from the training they're doing. And two is a buildup of metabolic waste byproducts in the muscle tissues. Part of that can be damaging to the body's cells. So how do we know that? If we're, for example, sprinting, we're in that, what they call the anaerobic threshold, lots of lactic acid, you know, our legs are burning, we can no longer run. Lactic acid is trying to provide an energy substrate for us to continue the work. But of course, it doesn't last forever. That's why eventually our muscles burn. You can't then repeat that 50 times over, but you can do a long distance run for a long period of time. Now, I don't understand the significance of trying to get sore. I don't understand the importance of it. I don't get the point of it.
That's what I was saying. Like, none of his thing made sense. And he's talking about the parasympathetic response, but it's impossible to be in a parasympathetic response when you're in a constant inflamed and stressed state.
It's contradictory.
He is in,
Yeah, I think as well, just adding to the point, like when you're trying to build muscle, guys, you just think every muscle, say you're just trying biceps, so every workout you'll get maybe like a fraction of a millimeter of muscle growth each session. That should match an appropriate inflammatory response. You shouldn't have sore, red, puffy arms after a workout. You get a pump, but in the long-term phase, maybe mid-term phase, maybe like a day after, your arm shouldn't be swollen by an inch. That means you've done too much or you've injured yourself. Or the inflammatory response is counterproductive. It's taken that inflammatory response to build muscle too far. You've like stepped over the boundary. I don't think the point of everything is to do like a Rich Piana 8-hour arm workout. You know, the idea is just to give your body what it needs to adapt and no more.
Yeah.